All right, well, let's just go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's Solo Practicing and Thriving webinar with Vanessa Candelaria and Valerie Garcia Hong, our amazing solo practitioner superstars with Infala. So thank you, ladies, both for joining us today and sharing all of your knowledge about how to establish a solo practice and make sure that it is profitable, make sure that's thriving, and making sure that you're sharing information that people might not even know about in terms of starting your own practice and how profitable it is and how rewarding it is to starting your own practice as well. So thank you so much for joining us. To everybody in the audience, just a few housekeeping items. Valerie and Vanessa are going to go ahead and do their presentation, and we're going to go ahead and save some questions towards the end, like maybe like the last 5 minutes or so. But please make sure to drop in your questions as we're going through as Valerie and Vanessa are going through the presentations into the chat, just so that we're keeping track of it on the back end as well. And so just a couple of things we also wanted to share is that this webinar is part of a program that we're doing this year in terms of providing more substantive programming within Infala, related to law, related to the practice and career development. One of the key things that we're hosting this year as our inaugural year is the Diversity and Leadership Conference that is going to be taking place June 23rd in Washington, D.C., as well as the mid-year leadership meeting on June 24th, also in Washington, D.C. If you have not had an opportunity to take a look at the website for that, I'm dropping it into the chat right now. That's www.infala.com/DLC for Diversity Leadership Conference. Among the chief topics that we are going to be touching on the Diversity Leadership Conference are things that are meant to help diverse lawyers, particularly Filipino American lawyers, AAPI lawyers as well, in terms of career development. And so some of our key programming consists of demystifying presidential appointments, boards, and commission. And we will actually have White House appointees who will be traveling to DC and speaking on our panel. The next one is Mastering the Art of Difficult Conversations. CLE pending, CLE credits are pending for that session. We are also going to have Breaking Through, Elevating AAPI Voices and Issues in Mainstream Discourse, which is also a pending CLE program. And we will actually be having reporters from the Washington Post investigative unit, as well as Jeffrey Gu, who is the co-founder and policy director of Make Us Visible. We also have an invitation out to a well-known Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter as well. So we are waiting to hear back from and confirmation from them. And last but not least, we have a session on strategies for advancing your legal career, navigating the private and public sectors with confidence. So it's a jam-packed diversity leadership concert. We have amazing speakers lined up. So I really encourage you guys to book your flights, book your hotel rooms, and come to DC. We would love to see everybody in person. So please register today as soon as possible. We also have some teaser webinars that are coming up as well, in addition to this, which is related to in-house counsel, as well as marketing legal practices and affiliates. And this is really how to market yourself on social media, and then also just in the NPR and just how to get your name out there, right? And how to get recognition within your practice area. So with that, please keep an eye out for all of your emails coming out from Infala. We're going to have a very busy rest of the year. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Vanessa and Valerie for their amazing presentation on solo practice. Ladies, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gage, Jill, and Dennis for inviting Vanessa and I to speak to Infala. We're really excited to share some of our tips. It's one thing to learn how to be a lawyer and practice in the field that you've chosen. We spend years of law school learning our craft, getting out there in the practical field and trying to do that. But it's quite another skill to run a successful solo or small practice. There are some key business skills for operating a thriving law firm that just aren't really taught in law school. Frankly, I don't think I picked it up until I actually already had jumped. It becomes less about lawyering and often more about business skills like time management or marketing or human resources. Vanessa, the way that we're going to do this, everyone, is Vanessa and I have a bunch of questions we've talked about, and it's just going to be a little bit of a sort of a fireside chat, different areas that we think that can be helpful. So, Vanessa, can you share a little bit about your background and how you ended up actually opening your own law firm? I mean, did you ever think that you would see your name on a shingle, a website, the signature line, anything like that?
No, never. It's a dream. So I'd never had entrepreneurs in my family. So I guess that being said, I was probably one of the first in my family to start a business, let alone a law firm. It was the summer of 2014, so almost 9 years ago. I was working for a firm. I've always worked for reputable family law firms in the Bay Area. And I started getting involved with the ABA, the Young Lawyers Division. I was very much involved in F Bank. And I was also part of the board of my local family law section. And it was really who I was as a person. I wanted to give back to the community. And it's hard when you work for a firm where they have, minimum billable requirements. And then I had 3 kids and a husband at the time. So my time was really stretched, and I found myself to be pretty unhappy and I was not a happy lawyer, as they say. So I actually happened to work for 2 women that um, were partners at the firm and then partners in life, and they saw how hard I worked, and they suggested to me that I start my own law firm, which is very unique. Most employers are never going to tell you to, hey, you should branch off away from me, we'll help you. So with their blessing, I started my own law firm September 1st, 2014. It was just me. I brought on maybe a handful of clients, and then they kept their word. They kept sending me business. I did a lot of networking. And I thought, this is the funny thought I had at the time I thought, if I go out on my own, I'm going to have more time for myself. I'm going to have more time for my family and more time to do the things that I want to do. The answer is when you start your own firm. I think I've never worked so hard and so much in my life. I'm going to say right now, it was definitely worth it at the time, but that's how I got started. In the first year, it was just me answering my own phones, filing my own documents, drafting, doing everything that a traditional solo practitioner does. But that's how I got started. I had 2 former bosses that believed in me and convinced me to do the crazy thing I never thought I was capable of. And so that's how I got started. Val, how did you get started? And when was that?
Yeah, that's wonderful, Vanessa, that you had mentors that actually wanted you to go and do off on your own. My start was a little bit different. I never intended to be a solo attorney or run a small law firm. I was a partner at a mid-sized law firm. Prior to that, I was even at a larger firm, but I was a partner for over 10 years with a Southern California, Arizona law firm. And I was mentored and I learned from one of the best trial attorneys, I think, here in San Diego, Doug Pettit. So I thought I was going to actually finish my career working at a larger law firm until I would say there was personal and financial reasons why I decided to leave. And I think for many of you that are at larger law firms, you'll understand this. There were disagreements regarding origination and credit and how business and client matters were split, that I ultimately realized I was never going to make the type of money that I wanted to make at that firm, the way that credit and origination was handled. So ultimately, I also had 2 younger kids at the time. I decided I was just going to jump and make that leap. I mean, it took me 9 months to do it, but what I had done was I was very strategic. I met with a tax attorney, I met with a corporate attorney, and I met with somebody who did finances to look at what my household expenses were going to be. Like, what did I need to contribute to paying for mortgage or rent or expenses. What did that look like in a month? What was the typical hourly rate that I thought I could bill? And how much work did I need, at least for those first 3 months, to leave? I had no idea that any of my clients would leave with me. Frankly, I thought I might have 1 or 2 cases, active litigation matters that could come, but I didn't really know what was going to happen. But I had done the numbers, and I think that's a really big thing, is to do the numbers and figure out, is this going to make sense? And at the time in 2018, when I was still at my old law firm, I was billing anywhere between 1950 to 2,000 hours in a year. I was billing like 160 to 175 hours in a month. Like ridiculous, right? I mean, that's insane. The amount of hours I was billing, the amount of money that the firm was making off of me. I mean, ultimately, when I looked at what I was making at the end of the year, I think my hourly rate was like $70 an hour that I was actually taking home. Looking at that and doing the numbers, I never looked at numbers before. I realized if I could bill at a certain hours and I had this amount of work, I'd be able to survive the first 3 months. And I made the jump. And like you, I was working from home for the first, frankly, 2 weeks. And then after that, I subleased space. Then I grew and I brought on somebody else. And then I subleased larger space. And then I subleased larger space. And then here I am 5 years. And I'm hoping that we don't outgrow this current space. But a lot of it was personal and financial reasons why I left. Never, ever planning on being on my own.
Thanks, Val. And you know what you did that was very different from what I did is you actually crunched some numbers. I kind of went into it a little blindly. I didn't know how many clients I needed. I just kind of trusted that if you put good out into the universe is going to take care of you. That's bad business advice. You should do what Val did. You should crunch numbers. You should make sure that you can still support your family on this endeavor. So let's talk about growing your practice. I have grown my practice to 7 attorneys. We're in talks with having 2 more join us. I've got now 3 locations. I've got one in the headquarters here in Walnut Creek, California, and then downtown Oakland. And I don't know if folks recently know that I have a new office down in San Diego. So, woohoo! I've got a team of 18 or 19 folks total. I'm really proud to say that I have an on-site childcare person, and I don't think many law firms have that. I'm going to put it out there for everyone, whether you work for a solo or a small firm, mid-size, or large firm. We have a lot of women in the workforce, especially hardworking women. And so it's my honor and joy to be able to provide an on-site childcare provider here at my firm.
That's incredible.
I encourage it. People are very happy and satisfied when they get to, they don't have to worry about that. So that's me. Val, when did you know it was like time to grow and build a team? What do you think are like the essentials of building a great support team and when you need to hire someone?
Right. So when I left, ultimately in July of 2018, like I said, I went on my own and I had about 2 to 3 active litigation matters here in San Diego. I knew that I could work up those cases on my own, but within a couple of weeks, I realized I was not efficient at running to the post office when I didn't know how to use a copy machine. I didn't understand how to mail things via certified mail. And I couldn't even figure out how to actually properly do like a proof of service. Like things were getting kicked back because I didn't know how to do it right. And I realized I was putting so much time into that and I started to crunch numbers again. And I'm like, if I can bring on a part-time person to assist me, then that's going to help me actually do the work that has a higher value of billable work. I learned all of this really from my husband, who candidly, I don't really think works that much, but he's very much about outsourcing work. He's always like, my time is more valuable. So we outsource everything. And even though I think he could probably do a lot of the stuff. But the point of it is I really learned that if I could outsource things, I looked at the numbers with it. So I brought on a lot of contract people to assist first, contract paralegals, contract receptionists, different vendors who could answer my phone and then forward me an email to handle intakes. I did contract paralegals, contract associates. I did all of that for the first 2 to 3 months of being on my own, and then realized ultimately that I had enough work that I wanted to bring on a full-time paralegal legal assistant, bring on a full-time associate. And now at 5 years out, we have a team of 5 lawyers, including Jonah Tolino, who is so, so amazing and so legit, and brought like a huge book from her practice to grow our practice here. And we have a paralegal that assists us as well. So, you know, in my business plan, I think Gage put in the chat, you know, a link to a business plan resource, liveplan.com. I don't know if I actually looked this far ahead 5 years later to whether I was going to have 5 or 10 years or 10 attorneys rather. I think this is a really good, safe place where I'm at right now, but you never know. And I think I've had a lot of solos approach me, and I know they've approached you, Vanessa, at least at Panay Powerhouse as well. I really don't know when to bring someone on. I'm scared about the expense. One of the couple things, some quick advice I would suggest, if you want to grow, is to first identify the type of team and the work culture that you want to create. Vanessa has an on-site childcare person. I mean, that speaks directly to the type of team and environment that you want to create. For us, you know, our whole purpose here is providing a diverse perspective. So I'm very specific about the people we want to bring in to work with us, because it's a specific culture that we're creating, specific clients that we want to deal with. And then I'm also like looking at what's important to my staff. So we have less billable hours than I had at my prior firm. I mean, my attorneys have a minimum of 20 hours a week that they're required to bill, because I really want them to have flexibility and we can do work in a different way. The other advice I would give if you're trying to grow your practice is to be very specific in your job descriptions. If you put that on LinkedIn, if you put that on Indeed, whatever service you're using to cast a wide net for staff, such as a paralegal or a legal assistant, be very specific in what you're looking for. I've gone through 2 or 3 legal assistants and paralegals that I brought on that just did not have the skills that we needed, and the ramping up of them to get to where I needed them to be cost a lot of money. So I think it's important to be direct of what type of skills you're looking for, which includes, I actually provide a performance test to anybody who applies. Like, I actually make them test on civil litigation, discovery, deadlines. I even do that with associates. I want to know like where they are. It's not a deal breaker, but it gives me an idea if I think that they can fit the type of practice that we have. So those are a couple tips I would have if you are ready to grow your practice from a solo to a smaller firm.
I think those are all the same types of things that I would do. I don't give a performance test though, and I think that's very helpful. I also know, just having been in, you know, hundreds of hours of interviews of like either helping law students get jobs or actually for my own firm interviewing folks, that I'm the type of person that likes anyone no matter what. And so I'm not good at hiring. And so you spoke about outsourcing last, you know, couple minutes ago, and I have to do that for myself because I'll hire Joe Schmo walking down the street because he had a nice smile. So having a performance test and a certain caliber of what you're looking for in a worker and being very specific about your brand, what your firm culture is huge. And I can't say, Val, like your marketing, everyone who I've met from your firm, you're all the same. You've done a really great job with that. And it's really scary. And you're right. I get this question a lot. When do I hire my first person? I'm going to say, do it right away. You don't scale unless you start growing. And I think that many of us are risk averse because we don't want to fail. We want to think things through 1,000% before we, take a step in that direction. I'm pretty risk happy. Worst thing that can happen is that I'm going to fail. I still, and for me, I don't care if I fail as long as I've tried my hardest. And like I said, I don't think the universe is going to allow me to fail because I trust it. So, also bad business advice. The universe will also pick you back up when you've fallen. But we're all not in this business to fail. And so it's not going to happen. You just have to know that about yourself. If you're even starting to go out on your own, you're not going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. So I would say hire early. And it's really, really crucial that your initial team is a solid team and shares the same values, because your team's going to change over the years. Like mine has, I'm sure yours has, Val. And it's just when you're starting off, that initial team is going to be the foundation of what your firm is going to be like in the next few years. So if you are like me and you know that you like everyone, but you don't know if they could do the good work, like get 3 other people to interview them, really do your due diligence and ask for references. I'm not seeing too many people call on references as much unless you're going to work for the courts. Like find an old coworker that worked with them back 2 firms ago. You need this information because it's your reputation and your business on the line. You want to know what that person was like to work with a couple years ago, last year, 5 years ago. It's all very relevant because people are who they are.
Mm-hmm. We do the same thing. We do group interviews where everybody, our current law clerk, I never met them. The rest of the firm interviewed him and decided that they wanted to bring him in. So I was trusting all of them that this is the person that they wanted to work with rather. But I think, one of the couple questions that came in directly was, if you're not ready to hire somebody full-time, and here in California, I was really scared because I didn't know if I hired a full-time employee, when would I start to have to pay benefits and medical and dental and 401k and when did I need workers' comp coverage? Like none of that stuff I really understood. So I was like, I'm not hiring anybody because I don't know how to do all of that. The reason I went the contractor route, which I know for many of you employment lawyers, probably making you cringe because the laws have sort of changed in California, but originally I found contractors either through the schools, because here, University of San Diego has a paralegal school, so they were putting contractors out, and I was finding it through that, or just word of mouth. I think there's a lot of attorneys out there who are not happy with the areas that they were with, and they were willing to do freelance work. I'm also going to put in, there's a business called Montage Legal Group, which provides contract attorneys for the entire country. So I tapped into Montage, Montage Legal Group, and it's a bunch of Harvard, Stanford, those types of lawyers who've left big firms. Like that's the criteria, and are willing to do contract work in everything from securities to employment to family law. And what they'll do is they'll send you a couple of resumes and they'll do contract work for you on, I need somebody to research this project, or I need somebody to do this memo, or can somebody do discovery for me? So that's how I found contract work to assist with lawyers, and then legal assistant work and paralegal work was through the schools.
You said you do performance tests. Do you do personality tests?
We don't do that yet, but I think that we should. We used to do that at my old law firm, and our group is small enough now that we actually just know what the personality test so obviously is, but we may do that in the future. I think we kind of jumped ahead with growing the firm, Vanessa. I think that, how did you even know where to start off with? Did you incorporate? How did you know like the corporate formation issues with respect to, having a DBA or a professional corporation or an LLP? I know how I did it. I'd like to hear how you did it.
I called 2 of my good friends, Mark Punzlon and Billy Chan. At the time, they were actually solos on their own. They had not yet partnered up to create what is Chan Punzlon. And so I utilized both of them and their brains. And if Billy told me to incorporate and that he was going to do my articles of incorporation, I did it. If Mark told me to contact this person about my malpractice insurance, I did it. If he told me to, he made me read this book, which was helpful at the time. I forget what it's called, but it's
So memorable.
it's not memorable because it needs to be rewritten. Obviously, times have changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I incorporated right away. I started off, like I said, September of 2014. By I want to say January of 2015, I had already hired someone. I was really lucky. The phones were ringing. I had more business than I knew what to do with. I think by the end of 2015, I already had grown to 4 people. So myself, a legal assistant, a paralegal, and an associate. So I think incorporating right away was good for me. I'm still a PC. I've changed my name. It used to be the Law Offices of Vanessa Candelaria, and that's really long. So if any solos out there are thinking of a name, I just out of experience, short is sweet, like Garcia Hong, boom. It's short and sweet is better in terms of being able to create a logo, branding yourself. I already write my name 20 times a day. If you have to write your own business name out as well, it's going to drive you insane.
Yeah.
So finding good people who are going to give you advice and just follow their advice, because I have no regrets in that. Also, my accountant, he was not your typical business accountant. He only worked with law firms. He only worked with law firms in the area. He knew a lot of the players in the Bay Area. And so what he did is we would have strategic business meetings as well in terms of growing my business. And so having a really, an accountant with like a business strategic minded background, um, who helped with the finances, and then also having really smart friends to tell you what to do when you can pick up the phone and ask a basic question. And and you have that in Infala. We have that. So if you're not utilizing the people in Infala, you really must. Everyone in Infala is such a gem.
Yeah, I mean, I was primarily a litigation attorney, so I didn't really understand the transactional aspect of what was the tax consequences of a S Corp, C Corp, LLC, LLP. I didn't really understand all of that. So I went to a tax attorney who was a CPA who walked me through a bunch of that stuff. And ultimately, I formed a professional corporation as well. And I think in California, it's either a professional corporation or an LLP that you can actually be as a lawyer in this type of profession. I went that direction as well because I had come from a shareholder corporation at my prior law firm. So I was familiar with how distributions happened. I knew I was going to pay myself as a W-2 employee. So I kind of relied on what I knew before in the formation that I created now. But I agree with Vanessa, reach out to people that, reach out to us, reach out to, Vanessa and myself, if you've got questions on who's the broker that you used for malpractice insurance. Do you have a bookkeeper or a CPA that you want to work with? I actually worked with a lawyer here in San Diego, Ariel Javier, who actually set up my entity. I think what's important though, is if you are leaving a law firm, I knew I was going to leave in January. I started to think about the idea of leaving. I started to plan, and I had actually registered Garcia Hung Law by May of 2018, even though I hadn't left my firm until August, which you are allowed to do. You are allowed to plan. You are allowed to prepare. You are allowed to sign a lease. You are allowed to get malpractice insurance. You can't take cases, right? You can't do that. But I think it's important that you realize you can do all these things. And if you want to speak with a lawyer that can help you in that transition, I'm happy to help you because there's a lot of legal ethics to be compliant with in how you notify clients when you do leave. But I felt like we were a lot more strategic than I think, a law student just leaving law school and hanging up a shingle, because I think I had a family that I was thinking of. So I wanted to make sure that I did it right. What are some of the technologies that you've used to help you grow your business, Vanessa?
So we use My Case. I think you use Clio, right?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes. I
I
love
think
Cleo.
they're similar because I love My Case. So My Case is probably a major tool that I use. It does have a function for workflows, but no one in my office likes it. So we actually use Asana. I don't know if you've ever heard of Asana, but Asana is great because as an attorney, I can go in, I never do, but I can go in and pull up a case and figure out when the deadlines are, what's the next step, who's doing it, who it's assigned to. And it kind of gives me like real time what's going on with the 250 cases in the firm. So it's great. I highly recommend Asana. I think it's free for the first 9. After you have 9 users on Asana, then you have to pay. We use Adobe a lot, especially during the pandemic. We can't live without Adobe for Adobe Sign. I don't do this, but my paralegal, my staff, they create beautiful things on Adobe. Somehow my signature gets on there and gets sent to the court. So My Case, Asana, Adobe, I use Word, Microsoft all the time.
Sure.
But we do have some Apple folks in the office here. So we have Apple users as well. And we have whatever compatibility software so that it transitions well. How about you?
Well, I think that what came out of the pandemic is that many of us can work from home, right? There was no requirement for us to actually be in the office. And I think what we learned from that was that technology is allowing us to do that. I think as a small firm, I was so worried that how was I going to compete with my prior firm or mid-sized firms that had all these softwares and things in place. I had an entire accounting team and a filing team and all these different things at my prior law firm. I just did not know if I was going to be able to service my clients at the level that I did than at my prior firm. And I think there are a couple of pieces of technology that we've used. So I use the law practice management software called Clio. I love it. I love it because you can do your billing, your time, you can manage documents in there. Everybody has access to it. They can access it here. It's cloud-based. They can do work at home. And it's just got a very easy way for clients to actually even pay our bills as well. It's like PayPal. You just click on the button and they can do that. And I think the great thing about it makes a small firm like ours look super professional. Our invoices and bills look really legit, so I really like Clio because we try to do, our team is actually here every day. For whatever reason, nobody wants to work remote anymore. But everything that we do is cloud-based. So we use Dropbox to manage files, to share documents with our clients. We also use Adobe for electronic signature. We use other softwares like eFax. For whatever reason, some clients still want things to be faxed to them. We don't have a physical fax machine. So we use eFax, which is an online thing, which looks like a fax, but it really is just another email. So those have all been really great in allowing all of us to work in different places and have the level of quality and sophistication that I think, larger firms have.
I think that's one of the, when you go out on your own, and you come from a larger firm, you want to be able to provide all of this technology to your clients. But what I think most people need to realize is there are cheaper, more affordable ways to provide the same services to the same clients as a solo or a small firm. So I just like to demystify that you need all of those things. Sure, large law firms, they have it because they can. There's something out there for every size firm. And so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced you need email and you need something to kind of manage your documents. And I have to say that Clio is like $150 a month, which at the time when I started, I was like, that's ridiculously expensive. I don't even know if I could pay for whatever, but it is leveraging that has been great for profitability at our firm.
And I think if you tap into your bar association, they should have discounts for things like Clio and My Case. I know I get some kind of discount for using My Case through my membership with the ABA. So if you look out there, there are companies also trying to make things affordable for more solos and small firms. So they're definitely out there. I'm still trying to get over the fact that you have some clients that like to fax. But we'll move on. We'll move on. I have a question for you. What are, let's say, your top 3 practical tips for growing your business?
You know, I've sort of alluded to this in my prior responses that I really do think you have to do the math or have someone help you, like a bookkeeper or a CPA, to help you calculate profitability. I check my QuickBooks often. So here's the deal. I'm not really great at math, and I never was a numbers person until I started my own firm. But I do check, my profit and loss statements. I do check things like that to see, what do I actually need for our team here to bill for us to be profitable. And because the reality is I'm pretty bad sometimes at collecting from clients. There are a lot of clients that stiff me, and I have to figure out how I can be profitable in that sense. So I would say, do the math and make sure you're constantly looking at your numbers. Another thing to grow your business, like I said, is have the type of technology that you need. And then the last, I think, is leveraging the skills of your staff for greater profitability, right? Like, I've got such a great team here. Christina and Jonah have over 20 years of experience each. They know what they're doing. They're like machines. They know exactly what to do. And I've got 2 associates who are really eager to learn. And I think you've just got to find the right team to help you to grow that. I don't hire because you're, at the top 10 law schools with the best GPA. I hire to see if I think you can actually learn and if you're going to be a good fit for our specific team. So that's what I would say are the practical tips to growing your business.
I really appreciate that, because your number game is pretty strong. I didn't start. I think it's also important. I love that you're sharing the fact that you're looking at your numbers almost daily. I have to look at them too, because it's something, I'm not good at math either, but I think if you want to be a successful solo or small firm owner, it's kind of a mandatory requirement to look at the numbers. So I had no idea what my conversion rates were. I didn't know what the average cost of a case in my firm was. And so when you crunch numbers like that and you know them inside and out, I think that just makes you a much better business owner. I like to be very generous with my firm, and I like to, we have annual trips. We're going to Cabo this summer. I have to know how much money needs to be in the bank for me to take the firm on a firm trip like that. And so I can't do that blindly. You have to know what the numbers are. And so your top 3 practical tips are similar to mine. The second one and the third one have to do with building the team. There's a saying, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And that's so true. You have to build that team. You've got to trust that they're going to do the work. If they are not as seasoned as you are, then you actually have to mentor them and make them better lawyers, better paralegals, better legal assistants, so that, because it's your reputation, and you training them only makes your processes within the office go a lot smoother. So building a great team. There's a saying, quick to fire and slow to hire, or maybe I reversed it. I'm not sure. But there's, like I mentioned earlier, I like everyone right away. And I think I'm that person that gives you 10 chances before I realize, like, it's probably not a good fit. But I've learned over the years, and I have like now a probationary period anytime I hire someone, because I need an out in case you aren't a good fit for the firm and for the team. And so one of the other practical advices is that you need to fire quickly if that is something that needs to happen for the better of your firm. And, slow to hire. It's like dating, right? You have to get to know someone before you make them a part of the team, because once they're a part of the team, they become an integral part, and it's really important you pick the right people. So
Yeah.
those would be my 3 practical tips.
That's great. One of the questions from the audience was, what are the things I should do in the first 6 months before and after I start my solo practice? And which is a great transition, I think, to the next area that we were talking about with respect to client development. But to answer that question directly, I think in the first 6 months, maybe even before you start your practice, I would say talk to a broker to get legal malpractice insurance. I did legal malpractice defense. I still do it. I think it's important to have insurance, and talk to a broker. And the great thing about legal mal coverage is that it's pretty cheap for a solo, and it's pretty cheap for a small firm, at least for that first year, because there's likely no claims that would have been filed. But definitely get that in place. I would talk with, like I said, a CPA or a bookkeeper to make sure you've got some type of accounting, whether it's QuickBooks or something else in place, so you can do proper accounting to your client. And then I think the more general thing is client development, right? How do attorneys become great marketers? Vanessa, like, where and how do you market? I know, I mean, you've built a practice since 2014. That's huge now. Like, why are people going to you other than providing good work?
I think for what I do, I think people know that I like to play, that I could have fun. But I think the other part that they know about me is that when it comes to business, I don't mess around. So I think I've built a solid reputation for myself in the family law community, that if you have a family law issue, you go to Vanessa. Um, I'm kind of a natural networker just because I love people. I don't know if you could tell I'm extroverted, but I get
No.
I get a lot of energy from just being around people, getting to know people. And I've been that way my entire career. So when I went out on my own, I sent out an email to everyone I knew, and I let them know that I was going out on my own, and that if they had any family law business for me, I would be grateful, for them to consider me as someone to refer to. And the love and support I got, I remember from that email, was so humbling to me that, again, I'm going to go back to the universe, and it's just not business advice, but I felt so grateful that I wanted to give back to, you get what you put out into the universe. And I felt like I was, when I make a decision to do something, I'm gonna give it 110%. And so I did that. I think the firm built a reputation with the team that I was able to build. And I mean, it's no secret. I'm at a lot of conferences. I'm out a lot. I know this sounds crazy, but if I could be out 7 days out of a week, I will. Because I know people need to reset because they get tired, but I don't. And I really, I think that's probably one of my strengths, is just to go meet up with people, to remind people about what I do. I also, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the marketing aspect, I love that. And I definitely admire you, Val, for all of the marketing that you do. In fact, I think I asked you to help me once. But in terms of client development, one thing I will say is, I operate in a really interesting area of law where, my clients are not going through, they're not their best versions of themselves. It is emotionally charged. I get accused of, being too soft if I, greet opposing counsel at the court. So it's very sensitive and very tricky. And no one's happy when I say, "Hey, you're divorced." Some of them are, and I send them a divorce cake or something. But most of the time, it's like, "Oh, yeah, finally." And so, what I do at the end when I send out my closeout letters for malpractice reasons is sometimes I'll give them a call, a blind call, and I'll just say, "Hey, how did I do?" Like, what could I do better? And I think people really appreciate that, when you, because you spend a lot of money with the firm to get a legal service done. And then you're like, oh, no, I'm never going to hear from them again. And no one wants to hear from their divorce attorney. I've heard that I trigger people when they see my phone number come up on their phone. And I want to, send the message that your divorce attorney doesn't have to be so triggering to you. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm very friendly with a lot of past clients, and most of my referral base is former clients. And
Right.
so that's how I kind of build the clientele.
I mean, I think that there's so limited time out there to be networking and going to every single conference, going to every single event. I've found in the last 5 years, I've tried to be more strategic, and I go back to the numbers again, folks. Like, I keep looking at, and what I've done in the last 5 years is at the end of every year, we look at the matters that we bring in. We identify who the referral source is, and then where that referral source possibly came from. And when I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, 25% of my business is coming from friends through Filipino Lawyers of San Diego or Infala. Then I realized, hey, that's really been great for me to continue to have that relationship with that organization. I'm going to sponsor those events, or I'm going to market at those events, or I'm going to do discussions at those events, because that's where I'm getting a lot of my work. If our branding is that we are diverse, experienced attorneys with a diverse perspective, I'm going to go to diverse organizations as the groups that we want to be part of. So I've been actually very specific, but we look at the numbers at the end of each year to figure out where our cases are coming from, so that I just don't want to waste time and effort in sponsorship money in areas that I would never get work from. So, I mean, I look at that, having a very sophisticated like client relationships management service. And I actually do that through Clio, something I touted earlier, is we do that all through Clio. I know that Gage is going to open it up to questions and answers. But really quickly, Vanessa and I are very active on social media. I think it's a very tricky thing for solo and small firm attorneys, because it's like hard to figure out the messaging that you want to do. For us, we like have identified our brand, and we're very specific about what we put out there on Instagram and Facebook and social media. But I base it on three things really quickly. That's the 3 E's. Your post has to educate, it has to either empower, or it has to enlighten. And if your post doesn't do either of those 3 things, that we're not going to do it. So that's kind of how I look at our social media. But
Same.
I know, Gage, you wanted to turn it over.
No. It's just a really quick housekeeping. I'd actually at this point right now invite everybody who is in the audience to go ahead and turn on your video cameras. We're still going to continue on with the Q&A. And Vanessa, I do want to hear what your post mantra is in terms of, how you decide what social media content you actually do share. But yes, everybody, please go ahead and turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your smiling faces. And so I also wanted to field one question after Vanessa answers that question about social media selections and how to best market the firm is any advice for folks who do contingency works? That's one question. And the second is, for Vanessa's firm, when is she going to be in Cabo? I think that's the other piece there too. And lastly, what is the biggest business mistake you may have had while building your firm? So I think maybe Vanessa, 2 of those questions are directed to you, and Valerie, feel free to jump in on the rest.
In terms of social media, it goes to delegation. I tell my marketing team what I'm interested in putting out there in the world. And it really has to align with my values. So when Valerie says the 3 E's, it's similar, right? I want to make sure people know I'm at this DEI event because we believe in it, or that we sponsor the Enfala Gala or the F-Bank Gala because I truly believe this firm, myself, we believe in the mission and the values that organization has. I say this a lot. I put my money where my mouth is. And so when I am intentional about where I spend the firm's money, it's really intentional. Like like Val said, I'm not going to spend money on, Farmers of America if it's not going to bring me any businesses. I shouldn't have used that example because farmers get divorced too, but um, but yeah, that's my response for social media. And then also I'm not good at social media. Like personally, I rarely post. And so I really defer to my marketing team to put the information about the team out there. But Val actually does it herself. And I think that is super commendable because she knows how to use Canva, which is, the way you can create marketing tools. And I think that's amazing. I'm scared to learn because
Yeah.
yeah. One of the questions was, repeat that again, Gage. Contingency work. Val, do you do contingency work?
We do. So we do plaintiffs and defense work here, both whether it's in the personal injury world or if it's a business dispute. With respect to contingency, I am very hesitant about taking contingency work as a small firm because we have to advance so many costs and expenses and experts. So we really vet a case before I take it on contingency. I've also come up with alternative fee arrangements, like a blended fee where I'll take a lower hourly rate and then a lower contingency fee and make sure that the client pays all the costs. But I don't think I'm at the place right now where I want to take a full contingency unless I know that there's insurance on the other side, that there actually is going to be money that I can collect on. But I don't usually take a lot in that sense. I think the other question was, what was the biggest mistake you think you've made as a solo or small firm? I mean, I have a lot of mistakes. So it's
Yeah, actually, we should have spent an hour on all the mistakes we made because you actually learn more from your mistakes than your successes, I hear. It has to do with your team. I think not having or not letting someone go right away. If we've all been working in offices for a really long time. Every single person that has showed up to today's webinar has had a work experience where there's been maybe a toxic employee or coworker, someone that, maybe doesn't fit the values and the mold of the team. And so I'm really mindful of that now because one person can affect the dynamic of your entire team. And as you grow, I can see like one person affecting a team of 4 or 5 or 6, but like for me, I've got 19. And recently I had someone had left the firm that was not the best fit. And I'm smiling because it's been such a weight lifted off of everyone's shoulders, and people feel a lot more free to talk now. And we've kind of gotten rid of that, I'll call it toxic environment that I never wanted to have in the first place. So hiring slow, firing or letting people go quickly because of, to maintain and preserve that team dynamic is something that I made a mistake on in the past, and I definitely won't do that again, or won't try. I'll try not to.
Yeah. I think a mistake that I've made as a solo and small firm attorney is getting nervous that there wasn't going to be enough work and just taking in whatever came in. I feel like I'm still dealing with the repercussions of cases that I took in 2018, and it's 2023, and I'm trying crappy cases that I took in 2018. And I think if you have the ability to say, that case is out of my wheelhouse, I don't actually know how to do that, or that case doesn't have the type of value, and I'm going to be running after a case I'm not going to be able to collect on, you should say no. And I think, it's great because Jonah Tolino just joined, and she joined our firm in February. We've been busy, and we've been getting a lot of phone calls, and I want to be like, let's take it all. I want all of it. And I think she's helped me be like, we got to slow down and pump the brakes. And I think that's a skill and and a mistake I learned from in taking cases that just weren't good, and feeling like it's feast or famine, but it's not going to be famine. Like you're going to be okay.
You're going to be just fine. I learned that too because I've got a lot of mouths to feed here at the office. And so there was a time a long time ago where I thought I needed every case that walked through the door. And you're right, Val, that's not true. I actually now have an intake coordinator who spends time, because it's worth it to me to have an A or B client, right? I don't want a C, D, or F client, because those are the ones that take up all your time and give you the biggest headaches. So now we have a front end process in place because we've had too many negative client experiences. And I've got an intake coordinator that kind of does an assessment of whether this potential new client could be an A, B client versus like a C, D, or F. We don't take the C, D, or F clients anymore. And it's definitely made work a lot more rewarding and working with the clients that we actually do want to work with. I'm not saying go out and hire an intake coordinator, but I would say if you have the time, which we all don't, really, if someone's going to pay you a lot of money to do legal work, just spend a little bit more time getting to know them to see if they'd be a good client for you, because not everyone will be, and you don't need the work. There will be someone else at your doorstep knocking for you to help them.
I'd like to maybe turn over, since Val, you did mention Jonah being on the call as well. Jonah, if you want to come off mute, and if there's anything you want to add to Val or Vanessa's feedback. I sort of put you on on the spotlight here, but great to have you on as well.
No problem, Gage. It's great to be here. I don't have questions because I have the privilege of working up close with Val, and I've known Vanessa for many years. And this is more just a cheerleading comment that these two really are incredible. I look up to them very much. Val is not kidding when she says we're busy. I probably would characterize that as me riding her coattails, but that's fine. We'll get things done one way or the other. I think that Vanessa and Valerie both put their money where their mouth is, exactly as Vanessa said. It's really been a joy and a privilege as a fellow businesswoman to watch them in action and to inspire so many people that I don't think that they'll ever even be cognizant of, to step out and take that risk. It is very scary, as somebody myself who left a partnership of 16 years in a very busy practice, to step out and be of counsel. I'm pretty much running my show with the benefit of resources with Valerie's firm. It's a scary thing, but these are really great pieces of advice. They come hard-earned, well learned by these two. And so I just want to give you both props in front of everybody. You are making more of an impact than I think you ever will know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonah. All right, so we have about 2 minutes left, and the last open question that we had from our chat, unless folks have any other questions, please go ahead and drop them into the chat right now, is, do you have to capture things you do in a manual or handbook as a best practice?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Quickly, I will, I have a policies and procedures so that, and I've spent years trying to perfect it. There's that. And then I also have, I want to say, a 75-page employee handbook. So I refer to those two pieces of, I'll call it the Bibles, to help me. Is that what the question was calling for? In terms of,
I think if it just, if there's anything that you needed to capture as, best practices or any sort of like standard SOPs and how to make those choices and things like that.
Yeah, we have an employee handbook as well. But I think if the question is a manual for how to start your own firm, I haven't had the time to do that yet.
Email me and I will
try to get
the name of that book.
Fantastic. Thank you. And our very, very, very last question actually is a question regarding recent law grads who are thinking about just going out and hanging their own shingle. So any advice for our recent law grads who are just great potential and just want to go do this right now?
I'm going to say this as diplomatically as possible. I think you need to have experience as a lawyer before you can put your name out there, because a lot of your business is built on reputation. And I'm just not sure that recent law grads will have that reputation to start building a business. And I think it's really important for, and I would say this to my own children if they wanted to be lawyers, it's important to get experience working as a lawyer, working in your, designated practice area and field before you kind of hang your own shingle. Now, do I know people who've gone straight from law school to opening up their own practice? Sure. Are they successful? Sure, but it wouldn't be my advice to go do that right away.
I think if you are in a position that you want to start your own practice and hang up your own shingle, then you should find resources like other solos in the specific field that you're working with to have them mentor you. I think it's learning the law first, like Vanessa said, and then the business, I think, comes second. But if you need to do it out of circumstance, then definitely find the resources with your local county bar or other solos to help you. I don't think you can do it alone. That's my thought.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to you both for sharing some really great insight. I think today we've seen like what the potential is to start, how it can be crazy at the very beginning, but also really rewarding, right? So thank you very much to everybody that's joined us. Thank you so much to Vanessa and Valerie and Jonah for jumping in with some amazing feedback for our Infala community as well. We will have recordings posted on YouTube if you haven't had a chance to catch this up in this full. Hopefully you'll revisit. We did drop in some resources that were discussed within the chat itself, but please feel free to review this video again. And once again, thank you so much for catching us on this Solo Thriving seminar, and see you all at the next webinar.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.